Amazing. Thank you for standing, even though you were instructed to. I appreciate it anyway. Can everyone hear me all right? Can everyone hear me all right at the back? Excellent. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jemima. Very glad to be here. This is my second time speaking at Codegarden and my third time speaking at an Umbraco conference. The first time I spoke at Codegarden, it was 2023, and I was in this little room on the side. And now I'm giving a keynote, so they liked me. Glad to hear it. All right, let's get into it. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about accessibility. I'm so used to having my slides back here. It's very weird that there's nothing there. So then I'm going to be talking to you about accessibility as a concept. Now, to explain what this talk means, basically, the first time I spoke at Codegarden, I gave a talk on how to build accessible components in JavaScript. Personally, I thought it was a weird talk to give at an Umbraco conference, but they chose it, so I'm not complaining. Anyway, what I learned from that talk was I got a lot of feedback from people being like, oh, I like the concept of accessibility, but at my company, we just don't have time to do it, or it's not a requirement, or a lot of our users don't have accessibility needs. So what I understood from that talk is that it's not enough to tell people how to make things accessible. I need to be telling you why you should be making things accessible. And that's how this talk was born. In this talk, I'm going to be telling you all the importance, is that the right word? All the benefits and the importance of making things accessible. It'll be fun. And also, it's the last talk of the day, I think, so that's always a great slot to be in, because you either get people that are like, wrap it up, I want to go home, or people that are like, I'm good, I don't have anywhere to be for the next 2 hours. But either way, I think we'll have fun. So let's get into why I want to talk about accessibility specifically, and what accessibility means to me. Now, when I first started building websites, well, let's go way back beyond then. When I was in university, many, many years ago, I know I don't look it, but yeah, thank you. Anyway, I used to stay in something called a special needs room. What that meant was I was living with people that had certain disabilities. So I was living with someone that had partial vision and someone that had complete lack of vision. And I used to help those people use their phones, basically. So it would be things like going on Facebook or submitting forms for school. And now their phones had these like accessibility features enabled. So things like needing to use 3 fingers to scroll, or needing to use 2 fingers to double tap, or things like that. And all I would remember is that every time I had to go on a website, it just felt very bad to use. And I'd be like, oh, why do these accessibility features make these websites so hard to use? And then I got into front-end development, and I realized it's not the accessibility features that made the websites hard to use, it's that these websites were not built to support the accessibility features. So basically, I ended up learning about accessibility out of spite, because I was very angry to be having to scroll through bad websites all the time. And now I'm telling you guys about it, so you don't have to build bad websites either. Isn't that great? Well, let's get into it. A little bit about me. My name is... God damn it, there's nothing there. My name is Jemima Abu. I am a self-taught front-end developer. I am also let's get through these letters, a Google developer expert in web technologies, a Microsoft MVP in web development, and a certified professional in accessibility core competencies. So basically, you're in good hands, but that also means clearly I seek validation. And that's why we have all of those up there. If you wanted to find me online, that's at Jemima Abu, so that's Twitter, Facebook, whatever, that's where I am. I don't know why I said Facebook, I haven't been on there in years. Probably because I was talking about helping people with Facebook. Anyway, moving on. This talk will go on for about 25 minutes, and then I'll have 5 minutes for questions at the end, so hopefully that'll be enough time to get through everything. Let's take a look at what we're going to talk about today. The first thing we'll be looking at is accessibility as a concept, so we're just going to go into understanding more about what we mean when we say accessibility. The second thing we'll be looking at is the importance of accessibility. So, why do we actually need to make these things accessible? And the third thing we'll be looking at is just a quick overview of how to know that the products you're building are accessible. So now I'm saying products, but most of the things I will be referring to are web-based, because that's what I build. But of course, these concepts, they apply to anything you're developing, whether it's mobile apps or video games or whatever. Accessibility is a general concept. So let's get into it. What is accessibility? Now, the dictionary definition of accessibility is the quality of being able to be reached or entered, blah, 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 you can read. So the point is, the definition of accessibility is that people can use the thing you're building, right? So accessibility is what makes a product usable by everyone. In that same vein, it means that if you're building something that is not accessible, you're building a useless product. And nobody wants to build useless things, right? Oh, maybe you guys get paid to build useless things, but me personally, I don't want to build anything that's useless. So now when we say a product that can be used by everyone, what do we actually mean by that? And this is the part where people usually fumble when it comes to accessibility, because most times we think about things in terms of how would I use that product, but not how would everyone use that product. For example, 16% of the world's population has some form of disability or the other. This is 1.3 billion people that have some form of disability, whether it's visible or not. Also, 2.5 billion people rely on assistive technologies. And I think when people think assistive technologies, you might think things like screen readers or like Braille. But for example, my glasses are assistive technologies. If I took this off, I wouldn't be able to see any of your lovely faces. And wouldn't that be a shame? Things like subtitles are also assistive technologies. For example, I recently got really into these weird C dramas on TikTok. If you guys don't know what they are, they're basically these Chinese dramas, and they always have the same plot, but I'm obsessed with them, and I spend my whole time watching them. The thing is, to watch those things, I need subtitles. Now, I don't know if your brain does this thing where if you are watching a show with subtitles, it convinces you that you understand what they're saying. So you're like, I know what they're saying, I can look away, and you look away, and you're like, I don't understand Chinese. Why would I think I knew what they were saying? So you look back at your phone. In that case, subtitles are an assistive technology because they are enabling you be able to actually use the thing that you're looking at. And then we have a 10% older population. Now, this is something that has become more prevalent in modern times because basically people are living longer, which is great, but it also means the way you use technology shifts as you go along your life. For example, I'm pretty sure like everyone's parents here, they use their phone with like 2 times the text. Because every time I take my mother's phone, I'm like, why is it so large? I can see like 3 words on the screen at a time. You don't need to live like this. And she's like, leave my phone alone. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, the point is, people are getting older, so you need to make sure that the technology you're building is adapting to that as well. The website you've built today, how is it going to hold up for people that are using it, people that are like 20 years older than you? How is it going to hold up 20 years in the future? So these are the things we need to be thinking of. And then finally, when it comes to accessibility, it might not just be a physical thing, it might also be an infrastructure thing. For example, there are 2.6 billion people in the universe. Aren't we Earth-centric? On Earth, I don't know about Mars, there are 2.6 billion people that have either slow internet or no internet at all. What this means is if I'm building a website and it has a lot of images or it has a lot of videos, the people that don't have as fast internet as I do, that don't have like 5G, it's going to take much longer for them to access that information than people that have faster internet. So the point is, when we're thinking of accessibility and we say everyone, it's very important as the people building products to think, who exactly am I building for, and make sure that the product you're building for targets that. Other forms of accessibility might not also be things that you would expect. For example, you can have things like situational accessibility. So now I have this clicker here, and I was informed that if I go more than 3 meters away from my laptop, I won't be able to use the clicker. So for me, this is a situational disability because now I'm limited to this area, so whatever is going on over there is none of my business. So that's the point. When it comes to things like accessibility, there are different ways of thinking about it, and it's not very straightforward because it's not just, oh, I need to do this thing for this situation and that situation only. You know, it's like that thing, there was this joke where they're like, when somebody is building, let's say a developer builds a bar, right? And then the QA goes test it. So he orders 9 beers. He orders 99 beers. He orders 9,000 beers. And then the customer walks in and orders a glass of water and the bar blows up. So the point is, the way people use your device is not necessarily the way you're thinking. There are different ways for people to do different things. So hopefully this explains a bit more about what accessibility actually is. Now let's go into the importance of accessibility. Why is accessibility important? And this, I think, is the reason why this talk is actually so prevalent right now. Basically, as of 28th of June 2025, which is in 10 days, the EU has initiated a new act, so it's the European Accessibility Act. And what all that jargon there means is that people will be able to sue you if your website is not accessible. That's the long story short of it. Now, you might be thinking, why would anybody sue me if my website isn't accessible? Well, let's take a look at a different graph. This is the number of lawsuits that have been enacted in the US based on the Americans with Disability Act. And when you're looking at this graph, it's not cumulative. So this does not mean, oh, it went from 2,300 and then 500 more cases. No. In 2018, there were 2,300. In 2019, there were 2,800 completely separate lawsuits. So the fact is, if people can sue you, they will. Maybe it's an American thing, who knows? But do you want to take the risk? No. And that is why we're in this talk. So let's take a look at some of the reasons why your website might be able to get sued depending on accessibility. But also, on the plus side, if you keep building websites that aren't accessible, then you get to use these fun stickers on Microsoft Teams. So that's something to keep in mind. You can be like, oh no, we got sued, and then your manager will know. But basically, let's look at some business cases for why you want to make websites accessible. And the point of this is, So like I said in my last talk, most of the feedback I got was that, oh, my company doesn't prioritize it because my PM won't sign off on spending more time, or our users don't use it. So let's look at some actual business cases that you can use to defend yourself to your company. The first is enhancing user experience and satisfaction. Now, if you're in a business meeting and you're like, oh, I need to make this thing like more accessible, and then your PM is like, we don't care about that. And you'd be like, oh, but it'll make our users happy, and then they'll spend more money. People like money, so they'll probably let you do it. The second is boosting search engine optimization. I'm going to speed run through these. Dun, 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 dun. Yes. Boosting search engine optimization, preventing alienating users and increasing user retention, implementing best practices in code, avoiding legal ramification, and finally, positive PR. Basically, what all this means is a bunch of legal jargon that you can use to convince your manager to let you spend more time making things accessible. And I think the last one is the most impressive one when it comes to positive PR, because there's this very interesting spin that people put on things these days. For example, the other day, I went to get a smoothie. It was like a berry smoothie. And they were like, oh, it's 100% vegan. I was like, I should hope so. It's fruits. What do you mean? But the point is, it's positive PR. It sounds nice when you say, oh, this thing is vegan, even though by default it would be. So it's a nice way of making things sound like, oh, our website is 100% accessible. To me, that's saying our website is 100% useful. I should hope so, right? But there we go. And finally, if none of these legal jargons work, you can use my favorite method, which is shaming them. You can be like, what? You don't care about accessibility in 2025? Could not be me. And finally, if they still don't let you do the spending accessibility, the fact is just do it anyway, you know? Like, you're the one building the website. What are they going to do, break into your laptop and delete the accessible code? No. So I think as developers, we should take a certain pride in the work that we build. I feel like I see this with designers a lot more. When it comes to developing things or like designs, designers usually push back on accessibility. If the user is like, or the client is like, oh, we want this text to be darker, a designer will be like, oh, if the contrast ratio does not meet the accessibility requirements, then it's not good for users, and they usually push back. But for developers, they'll be like, I want this modal to appear 50 times on the page, and the developer will be like, I don't care, do what you want, and then they'll build it. So I feel like as developers, we should also have a certain sense of, I want the things that I build to be usable by people, and then that way we can kind of avoid this situation. Pop quiz time. Now, whose job is it to make sure products are accessible? Is it the job of the designers who are designing the product? Is it the job of developers because we're the ones building it? Is it the content creators because they're the ones making the content on the page? Is it project managers? All right, any guesses? I can't take guesses, so it's everyone. If you chose an answer, you were wrong. Haha. Didn't you just hate teachers like that when they would like ask you a question, but then the answer wouldn't be in the option? I'm like, why are you tricking me? I'm here to learn. What do you gain from doing this? But yeah, clearly, I'm that kind of teacher. So haha, the answer was everyone. Well, hopefully that sticks in. The point is, as people building products, it's everyone's job to make sure this thing we're building is accessible. So it starts from the people coming up with the idea. It starts from the people designing it, the people developing it, and finally the people shipping it out and testing it. We all need to make sure that the products we're building can be used by everyone. And finally, let's get into the testing. Actually, I'm very confused because it's been 5 minutes, but I've gone through like half of my slides. I'm like, did I miss something? That's crazy. Anyway, the testing. So now, we know the importance of accessibility, and we know why we should be making things accessible. So let's get into how you can actually check if things are accessible. So like I said, I'll be talking from the perspective of web accessibility because I'm a front-end developer. But if you work with games or you work with whatever other things there are that aren't web, I'm sure you have your own accessibility ways of doing these things. So the first thing I would recommend is the Lighthouse tool in Chrome DevTools. Lighthouse is really good for providing like a quick snapshot of accessibility requirements. And also, if you get a perfect score, they give you fireworks. This is my website, humble brag. So yeah, there we go. Thank you. Yes, I'll take the clap for that. And then if you're the kind of person that seeks validation like me, that's also great, because you're like, yay, fireworks. It's like a gold star, because they don't give you that anymore. Secondly, we have the Web Accessibility Evaluation tool. This is Wave, and it's just a really useful way of breaking down the content. So what Wave does is that it breaks it down in a matter of like layout structure. So when it comes to web, we have things called semantic elements. Semantic elements are what we use to lay out our website. So it can be things like navigation, main body, aside, Wave is a great way of saying, oh, this is how a screen reader would read your website. This is how a screen reader would understand like the exact layout of your website. Wave is really good for that. Accessibility is another great website that gives you audits. So if you use Accessibility, it kind of provides like a more in-depth audit. I don't know if they started charging for this, because last time I used it, it was free, but capitalism, so I don't know. But it's something to look out for. I think Accessibility, if it's free, then it's good, so check it out. There's also the Web Accessibility VS Code extension. So this is an extension you can install in Visual Studio Code, and then that just helps you, it kind of just prompts you to know that you're writing code in an accessible way. So I think the benefit of using the VS Code extension is that I wouldn't recommend it for like actual accessibility, but I think it's a good reminder. So it'll be like, oh, you should use this thing here, and then that might prompt you to think about the other things that you're not using as well. So I'll definitely recommend that one. And then finally, let's get into what the accessibility guidelines are. So now you know how earlier I was like, oh, somebody can sue you if your website isn't accessible. Now, what are the grounds that somebody can actually sue you on? The grounds that the like legal directives use to determine how a website is accessible or not, it's called the WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are what users use to determine is your website actually accessible or not. And then also, when we say accessible, this only applies to certain sectors. So if you are in anything that people require for purchasing or information. So for example, if you run an e-commerce website or you run a news website, and because your website is not accessible, it prevents somebody with disabilities from being able to read the information or being able to carry out a purchase, that's when you can be sued. I can't just come on your website and be like, I don't like those colors, I'm going to sue you. Maybe I could, but I wouldn't personally, so I don't know. And then it's also, on terms of also facing legal ramifications, this is also very important because it can, anyone's website can be affected by it, and anyone can sue you for it. We've had a lot of, when I used to work in a Shopify agency, we had a lot of clients, because they were running e-commerce websites, they would have an EU website and a US website, and they would get sued on the US version of their website because something on it wasn't accessible. So they'd have to come to us and be like, oh, what can we fix here? And we'll be like, yeah, sure, let's help you out. But the EU didn't used to do that, but 10 days from now, 28th of June, new directive, you can be sued, blah, 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 blah. We got the point. So let's get into the WCAG and what these guidelines actually represent. So now, perceivable is the first guideline that is used for the WCAG, and what perceivable means is basically being able to see information in an understandable way. So what does that mean? Earlier, I talked about subtitles, right? Subtitles help me understand what these Chinese characters are saying to each other, because that's very important to me. So subtitles are an example of making things perceivable. It could also be something as if you have images or videos on the screen, you want to make sure that you're providing some kind of text alternative for people who have visual disabilities. So if I cannot see your video completely, or if I cannot hear your video, how do you communicate that actual video going on to me? You also want to make sure you're providing captions and transcripts for things. So this is not just limited to building products. This can also be in, for example, like me personally, I always turn on my transcripts during any Teams or Microsoft meeting, because I have an attention span of a goldfish. So if like I lose track, I need to make sure I have the transcript. You know when they call your name during your meeting and you're like, frick, what they say? If you turn your transcripts on, you can just scroll back and then you know what they said. So transcripts, great way of making things perceivable. We also have creating content that can be presented in different ways without losing meaning. So what this means is if I'm translating like a video to text, am I making sure that all the important information is being transcribed in that text? And then we also have making it easier for users to see and hear content. So this is just things like handling your contrast properly, making sure you're using like the right. You know there are some websites that don't allow you unmute videos? I'm like, why? I want to know what that video is saying. Mind your business. So that's another example of something that would be inaccessible if you're not giving a user full control about how they experience your product. So these are just things that we can keep in mind. Secondly, we have operable. What operable means is a user is actually able to use your website. For example, imagine if there were no stairs on this stage and I had to like frog leap onto here. That might be fun to watch, but the point is it's not a very operable stage because like, you should have stairs. So stairs are something that makes a stage operable. In the same way, you want to make sure that your website is operable or your product. So this can be something like making sure that keyboard focus is provided. So if you create a component and it can be clicked with a mouse, can it also be clicked with a keyboard? Things like this, keep in mind. It's also giving users enough time to use content. I don't know if you've ever gone on a website and then a modal pops up and it's like, you haven't done anything in 5 seconds, we're going to shut down now. I'm like, give me time. Why are you rushing me? Like, let's calm down. See, that gets me all stressed for no reason. So the point is, if you're going to give any users anything that's on timed content, give them like 5 minutes, Don't just be like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then everything shuts down. It should also make sure that you're using content in a way that, I don't know what that was. You should make sure you're using content that doesn't trigger any negative reaction. So this can be making sure you're not using like super flashing lights, or you're not playing videos without muting them. So things like that to just make sure that you're not creating content in any way that's intrusive to your user. And then you should make sure that you're helping users navigate and find content in the right way. So if I go on your website, how easy is it for me to find the information I'm looking on? If I go on the website and I want to buy something, I don't want to be scrolling through like 10 pages of useless information. I want to go straight to the buy button and buy my thing and get out. So these are all things that make products operable, and it's also a very important factor of the accessibility guidelines. Up next, we have understandable. Now, understandable and perceivable are very similar, but they're also different. So with perceivable, like I said, it's being able to see this information. Understandable is being able to understand what you're seeing. If I had my slides in French, you could perceive them because you could see it. But if you don't understand French, you don't know what's going on my slides, right? So that's just the difference between perceivable and understandable. If for perceivable, I'm saying, okay, there's this video, it's spoken in English, I'm providing an English transcript. That is perceivable to English users, and it's perceivable to French users, but it's only understandable to English users. So for something to be perceivable and understandable, it needs to be meeting the user in whatever direction they are. So if you say, okay, I'm going to provide transcripts, are you providing transcripts in multiple languages as well to ensure that all users can understand them in the same way? It's also, with understandable, it's also making sure that your content appears and operates in the same way. Now, with web design, we're not very, the industry doesn't change much, right? You go on a page, you see a nav, you see a main, and then that's it. This is why I don't like shopping on certain websites. I don't know if anyone has ever visited Shein before, but if you go on the Shein website, you get like 3 pop-ups at once. You get a spinny wheel, you get you've won a free product, and you get another random pop-up that's like, send up with your email. And I close it immediately, because that's way too many pop-ups, and I have no business doing that. So for me, that's not a website that operates in an understandable manner, because it's too many things going on, and I just don't like that, It's just not my vibe. So when it comes to being understandable, it's also making sure that your website behaves, or your product behaves in a way that's that's predictable for users. And this also applies to not just like fixed products. Because I do a lot of conferences, I tend to travel a lot, and the biggest bane of my existence is hotel showers. I don't know who is in charge of building hotel showers, but I've never gone to a hotel and they had like an easy to understand shower. It's always like you have to push this, but one time I had to call front desk and be like, please come help me turn on this shower. I do not know what's going on. And then they came and they were like, oh no, you just have to push this button here and twist this knob. I'm like, why do I have to do 2 things to turn on one shower? Turn a knob. Anyway, the point is, clearly I'm very worked up about showers. But for me, hotel showers are not accessible because they're not understandable things. So if you're building products like that, you want to make sure that they are predictable to your users. And then finally, we have robust. So now, like I said before, because people are aging more, which is great, it means we need to make sure that the content we're building or the products we're creating can last the test of time. That's basically what robust does. What robust says is the content you build today or the product you build today, how is it going to hold up 10 years from now? Now, of course, there are certain things where they just go obsolete because that's how time works. But if you're building a website or you're building an app, the point is we have certain things in place, like how we use polyfills and things like that, to ensure that the thing we build now, in 10 years, people can still use it in much the same way. So these are pretty much the 4 web accessibility guidelines that you should be meeting to make sure your website is accessible. Hopefully you meet all this and you won't get sued, but if you do, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I just told you what I know about accessibility. And then finally, let's get into accessibility first development. So now we've seen ways of testing, and we've seen these guidelines we're supposed to be meeting. But the fact is, the only way to actually make sure your website is accessible is to care about making your website accessible. Accessibility should not be an afterthought when you are building your products. Now, I heard the speaker give a very fun analogy the other day. She was like, accessibility is like a blueberry muffin. If I bake a muffin and I shove blueberries in it, and I hand it to you, and I'm like, here you go, a blueberry muffin. You'd be like, what the heck is that? And why are you calling it a blueberry muffin? Because that's not how you make a blueberry muffin. I don't know how you make a blueberry muffin, but I know how you make an accessible website, and it's not by shoving a bunch of ARIA labels into your website when you've already built it. You need to start from the get-go, and you need to make sure you are laying the right foundations to make that website accessible, and then that's how you actually end up with an accessible website. So some easy ways to do that according to what we've looked at first. It can be making sure your designs and your content are accessible before you even start the development, making sure that the designs meet those WCAG standards that we were talking about earlier, implementing an accessibility checklist at every stage of development. This is something that I like to do personally. So I don't have like a list, but I have like a mental way I use websites. I don't like using the mouse on websites. I just always use a keyboard, and that's a really great way for me to test accessibility because I'm making sure I can use the keyboard. I'm making sure that things have the right focus. I'm making sure my focus doesn't get trapped anywhere. So these are just very important things for me. And then finally, making a deliberate effort to care about accessibility. Ignorance is not an excuse. An example I like to give for this one is, for example, I don't know how to drive, right? So if I got in the car and I started driving and I went down the wrong road, I did an illegal U-turn, and the police gave me a ticket, and I was like, oh, you can't give me a ticket because I didn't know that this was not the right rule, so I should be exempt from it. First of all, they'll arrest me for driving without a license. But secondly, the point is not knowing what the rule is not enough an excuse. It doesn't really hold up in a court of law. So these are the things that we should be thinking about as people that are making the product. It's not just, how I didn't know about this one. It's making deliberate efforts to care about these things. And then, yeah, I do have some resources here on like further ways of making things accessible. It's basically just stuff on the EU directive, because I think this is the biggest one that companies care about because like legal reasons. So if you want to check that out. The third video there is from a YouTuber called Christy Vers. She has a visual disability, but she basically shows how she uses her phone as someone with visual disabilities. And I think it's very good because I think the main issue with accessibility is that people tend to not put themselves in other people's shoes. So if I'm building something, I don't think how is somebody that isn't me going to use it. So I think watching a video or just interacting with somebody else using something in a different way would be a great way for you to learn more. But yeah, I think that's about it, 25 minutes. Thank you so much for listening. And if there are any questions, I'll be taking them now. And applause. Yeah. Thank you. All right, then we're good on time. Excellent. Oh, they left me on stage. All right. Yeah. I was like, do we have questions? You can come up, don't be shy. Oh, sorry, yeah, a question. Oh, I thought it was an online question.
Is it safe for me to watch?
I love the confusion, see? Lack of accessibility.
Yeah, accessibility, right? It's a fun time. Oh, good, look how loud I am. I can be this loud without it, but that's fine, thank you.
Hello.
The EEA stuff's really interesting because there's a lot of exemptions that exist there. I guess what I wanted to ask as a question is, when you've got clients that are able to kind of like work around the accessibility, albeit they're not trying to be evil, they're just trying to save money. Yeah, what is like kind of like the counter to that? When they're able to kind of like validate why they don't need to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially for someone that used to work in an agency. The fact is, so his question, in case everyone didn't hear, was when you have clients that are trying to like cut down on spending time making things accessible just to save costs, because sometimes you might be a small business. You don't have like 10,000 extra to spend on a developer to make your website accessible. But for me, the issue is the money you save on development, if you get sued, you have to pay it out anyway. So I think in that situation, it's things like having open communications with your client. What we used to do in my last agency is we estimate a feature before we even build a client. So if I have a feature and they're like, oh, I want to add a new landing page, or I want to add a new newsletter registration model. If I'm saying this will take me 5 hours, I'm thinking 5 hours plus accessibility. So if you go back to the client and you say it's going to be 5 hours and they're like, oh, we don't want to spend that money at all, what can we cut down on? I just say nothing. If you want the feature, it's going to spend 5 hours, you know? So a lot of times clients are willing to, I'm not going to say, oh, it's going to take 5 hours because of accessibility. I just say it's going to take 5 hours. So a lot of times clients will be like, okay, can we change the design, or can we use an already existing feature? And then that's usually how we have like a compromise. Or sometimes they just say, yeah, we don't care, spend your 5 hours. So it's really just things like that. Like you want to meet the client budget, but you also know that you have a responsibility as the person building the thing. Like making it accessible would be a requirement. So you cannot cut out the making the useful feature parts. Does that help? Yeah, great. Yes. All right.
First of all, can I just say, this has been a very engaging talk, so thanks
Thank
so much.
you.
I don't see like
I'm
many
very
speakers
engaging,
like
thank
yourself,
you.
so yeah, well done.
Stop it, oh my God.
It was great fun just watching you. Yeah. And secondly, we had this Umbraco accessibility event not long ago, and there were lots of great talks, just like your talk. And I just wanted to say, like accessibility, making something accessible is actually not a lot of hard work, if you do it like, starting from the beginning correctly.
Yeah.
So it is really not like mission impossible. It's just a small task, and you can easily, even like if your website is not fully accessible, it's actually quite easy to make it accessible using tools like
Exactly.
Wave.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
see, like blueberry muffin, it'll take you the same amount of time to bake a regular muffin. So just, I don't know, I don't bake, but I assume, so just do it from the get-go. All right, did we have any more questions? I see no hands. Was there a hand that I missed? No? We're in this awkward limbo. It's like, should I let you go? Should I not? All right, y'all can get out of here. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the talk. Okay, bye.